Welcome to Voices of Hope. I'm your host, Omar Kenyatta Clark, and this is a brave space, a space where vulnerability meets courage, and where real stories of resilience come to life. Each episode will bring you powerful conversations with people who face some of life's hardest challenges and turn them into sources of strength. We believe each story has power to heal, to inspire, and to remind us that we're never alone in this journey. Whether you're seeking hope, looking for inspiration, or simply need to know someone else has walked through fire and made it out, this is your space. Welcome to Voices of Hope. I'm your host, Omar Kenyatta Clark, and today's guest is Ellen Ritz. She is president of NAMI Central Suffolk, Long Island, New York. She has valued service to others throughout her life. Through NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, she teaches courses, chairs the Faith Net Committee, runs support groups for people struggling with mental health disorders, as well as for their families. Ellen is a frequent presenter to students and staff at public schools, universities, and medical schools, as well as law enforcement, which is much needed, corporate groups, faith groups, and to the general public. Ellen advocates with legislators regarding improving mental health services. She is also vice president of NAMI New York State, and served on the New York State Executive Committee program, finance, bylaws, PNP, personal and education committees. Ellen is a registered nurse with extensive experience in hospitals and schools. She has experience in trauma units, and is a long-time health educator. Ellen graduated from Columbia University and is a member of Sigma Theta Tau, the Nursing Honor Society. She was a longtime member of the East Williston School District Board of Education and served as its president. She has been honored as a Woman of Distinction by the New York State Assembly and named to the Women's Roll of Honor by the town of North Hempstead. Ellen believes in making a difference. Ellen, welcome to Voices of Hope.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And, if we could just impart or share knowledge and certainly hope, right? And my belief is the more knowledge you have, the more choices you have. And you consider whatever choice you want, but the more you know about something, the more you can be informed and decide what you want to do.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for that. So just to get started, I would just want to ask you more about the work you do. And, for people who don't know what NAMI is, can you tell us what NAMI is and how you're involved with that?
Yeah, so NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Even though I prefer using the term mental health conditions instead of mental illness, because I think it's a little bit less stigmatized. And really what we want to do is make this mental health conditions or mental illness, it's a biological basis, not 100%, but mostly. And if we can tell people this is not a character flaw, but it's treatable. And again, I love your name, Hope. There is hope for everyone. Doesn't mean it's easy. Doesn't mean you go right there. But with work, like in anything else in life, you can do it, right? You can get there. And that's really one of the points. So NAMI is it's the largest national grassroots organization in the country, mental health organization. And it started in 1979, and they create the policies, and we do a lot of programs, and the programs are evidence-based, which means they have real results. They put down the programs. I'm part of the New York State Board, and what the New York State does, the NAMI board, is actually guidelines, programs, trainings, a lot of really wonderful things, advocacy, and actually I'm president of NAMI Central Suffolk, Long Island, and that's the affiliate or chapters. That's boots on the ground. We do the programs. All affiliates or chapters throughout the country do the work and, get training for the programs. by and large, the majority of people are volunteers. We are 100% volunteers in our affiliate, which means 100% of your donations go to our programs, go to support peers or people who are struggling and their families. And as you said, we're in schools, we're in faith groups, all faiths, multi-faith, as well as anybody who has hands-on, which are professionals, medical students, occupational therapists, any professional who is going to be treating anybody. Mental health is part of everyone, right? And I think there's a saying, everybody wants it, but not
Yes.
everybody has it. But you have to work towards it, right? It's just like physical health. You have to work towards mental health every day. Some days
Yes.
easier than others, right?
Yes.
It's not,
Yes.
not
Yes.
every day, oh my God, I got to be tortured. But, we have stresses. And life is
Hmm.
not a flat plane. It is always bumps, right? With things happening. And everybody has problems. It's how you handle them that makes the difference. And some people look like, oh my God, they're having a good old life. And other people say, oh my God, life is so tough. But the truth is that it's really about how you handle what goes on. And I was a Bellevue emergency room nurse, and that's my personality. I get through emergencies. I look like I'm doing really well. And then I may feel it or fall apart a little later or a lot later. And that's just sometimes it's a personality, or I was taught always not to be a victim, but to
Hmm.
see what you can control, what you can't control and what you can do about something, and then throw out what you can't control. And
Yeah.
that's what we call resilience, right?
Yes, yes. And that's something that has come up a lot on this show about things that you can control and the thing that you can't control that's just out of your hands. And not to focus too much on what's out of your hands, but focus on, what you can control and make a difference. Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. That's a very
Omar,
strong
I want to
message.
say something. I'm going to tweak you a
Yes.
little bit. I want you to throw everything out that you can't control,
Mhm.
not even focus on a little bit, and really
Mhm.
focus on what you can change, what you can't control. And
Yeah.
then if that doesn't work, then you go try the second thing. So
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that it's always going to work what you can't control, but really understanding if it doesn't work, let's plan B and then plan C or whatever it is. And that's really how life works, right?
Yeah. And so Ellen and I, we've had some conversations over the phone, some great conversations before we hopped on this and actually recorded our conversation. Um, and I could just tell how passionate she is about mental health and the work she does. So I'm wondering, how did you get involved with NAMI in the first place?
Well, after I graduated, I did my leadership in the Psych Institute. I was always interested in, psychiatry, psychology, mental health, whatever that is. And then when I started, as I was young and dating, as I was psyching out my dates, saying, "How do you feel about that?" I said, "Well, I don't think this is quite what I want to do." Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I ended up being in the emergency room, which I love, that fast acting, fast thinking, moving thing. And I ended up in Bellevue emergency room. So as I went along, after being head of a trauma unit and then intensive care unit and being a health educator then at Mount Sinai, teaching about diabetes and, being as a health educator, as we said, one of the things that happens is that people struggle, right? I had a very dear fellow nurse. I moved to the island and a fellow nurse that was married to a lawyer whose husband was struggling with bipolar. Living with or struggling with, that's usually what I say,
Mm-hmm.
not suffering with and you are not the illness you are living with, just like we're living with a heart or a kidney problem. And so she said to me one day, "Oh, I'm going to a NAMI something or other." And "You want to come?" I said, "What's NAMI?" Right. So I
Mm-hmm.
went. And, because there were people struggling in my own family, we did the family to family classes. So you didn't have to say much, as a lot of education. By the third class, it was our turn to talk, and all I did was cry. So as a somebody with a lived experience, and all people in NAMI have a lived experience. Either you've struggled with a mental health condition, or you are somebody who's a family member or a caregiver of someone. And that changes you to understand the complication and increases your empathy and increases, the connection, being able to not be impatient, but to help another person because we all are unique, right? So every situation is unique, but there are elements we can all relate to. And, just like the peer advocates are a really big area now, because people who've lived it or been it sometimes can relate a little bit better or a lot better.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyways,
There,
I went
there's,
to NAMI
there,
and I
yeah.
stayed.
Yeah, there's always, the universal like human condition that we all, experience to some extent.
Right.
But some have different experiences, and that's, part of why I created the show, is to share our experience so we could see ourselves in each other, and kind of draw strength and hope from each other. Which is, very similar to what the peer movement is really all about. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. And maybe a little bit later on, we'll get into more of that lived experience. But before we get to that, I just want to ask you a little bit more about NAMI. Like, what is your mission, but what is also NAMI's mission? Um, with that, you can say your mission and NAMI's mission if
Yes,
it's,
it's
completely aligned, or
It's aligned.
if it's two different things, that's okay. So yeah, just let us know a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, we were actually absolutely aligned. It is really about education, support, and advocating for mental health services and laws. And I was just in Albany this past week talking to legislators in the Capitol, about really supporting in their bills things that are important for services for people who are struggling in their families. Unfortunately, insurance is one of the problems in the unequal care and the unequal open door that people do when they're ready for services and finding the right service that will take insurance or Medicaid. So, my faith, not faith, but it's also faith, but it's part of my focus is really as a health educator, touching lives. Two things that I think we offer that are really important. One is connection, right? So we have a lot of specialty groups where people understand in your particular situation. And that connection is so important because human beings need connection. And we all feel alone when you're struggling with something. And because of social media, not our friend always, what happens? Everybody looks like they're having a good old time. Everybody looks like they're having a party. And and it's not true. Never look at anybody you know nothing about them, and I tend to be private, so I tend to, when I was on the school board or anywhere in life, I tend to not share some of the things that are going on, whether it be in my family or myself or whatever, and that's all right. It doesn't mean they're not going on, and it doesn't mean you're not struggling and you're not feeling deeply about how do I work this, how do I get out of it, what do I do, right? Because when it's close to you, particularly in a family, and as much as and I know quite a bit about mental health, you know nothing when it's in your family, because that emotional connection with you and your loved ones and people you care about sort of brings a fog. And so two things that we do in particular is support people who are struggling. And the second thing is really the most important people in your life are your family. Professionals are important, don't get me wrong, they're wonderful and you need them. But family, how you view, how you support and understand what a mental health condition is, and when it stops somebody in their tracks because they can't focus, and there's two first things that happen is your lack of focus, because that frontal lobe, which matures towards the age of 30, is the last to mature, and it affects your focus. And the second one is isolation or pulling back socially. Those are things that if you notice this change in behavior, not for a day, not for a week, but beyond a couple of weeks or months, then that there's something that you need support in figuring out. And that's really important to recognize. And it's hard, because I always thought, okay, it's developmental stages, it's this or that, right? We never know, because nothing was talked about prior to the last few years, right? Mental health conditions was, oh my God, the crazy guy, the alcoholic, the drug addict. And those are self-medication. And people who, and if we can just get them treated, and generally, not 100% of the time, medication works and there's other treatments, someone can have a functional full life. It doesn't happen always, right away. It's a journey. Recovery is forever, just like diabetes and asthma, right? You have to continually learn, change a little bit of the lifestyle and what you need, and recognizing symptoms. All of those are doable. but it's work. And I have so many families sometimes they say, that's a lot of work. I said, well, if you're not willing to do the work, how do you expect your person to do the work, your loved one? So, and we have a sense of humor. I mean, things are so important and so uh, stressful and sensitive. Having a sense of humor appropriately is really helpful, you know.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. But it's something that two things I just want to say from what you were saying were um, which I think is a very strong hope statement, is that people can have full lives. You know, you put in the work, you can get your life back. Because there's I see it almost every day when in my job, where I go into psychiatric hospitals, inpatients, where it's a major life disruption, and sometimes people feel like their life is over, that they'll never be back, you know, and um and that was me in my past. I was in those situations where I wasn't sure, what my life would look like, but I was someone that was able to put in the work, get the medication, do the therapy, have the social connections, all of those different pieces, and it's a holistic approach. It's not just one thing.
Yeah.
And I can say I've been able to get my life back, and other people can too. So thank you for sharing that hope statement right there. That people can get your life back. You could have a full life even with a mental health condition.
But can I
Um,
just say something that
of course,
really
of course.
understanding some of the challenges, a lot of things that I do, also having been a hospital nurse and emergency room nurse, clinic, whatever. A lot of times people come and they complain about something that, whether it be a professional, the hospital, clarifying what is the expectations. And sometimes people take it out, not purposely, but they're so frustrated. They want so much for their person who's struggling that a lot of times they really redirect it in a place that's not always so helpful. Sometimes it
Mhm.
is, and then we got to help support them getting their concerns to the right place. But a lot of times it's really, we cannot control or fix another human being. And I think that's one of the things that people try so hard to do because you're used to, especially as a parent, right? You're used
Mhm.
to a 3, 5, 12-year-old listening to you mostly, right? Mostly. But then when they become actually teens sometimes and young adults, they have to figure out who they are. And there's I wouldn't say confusion, but I'm supposed to be independent. But when you have a mental health condition, it changes the ability to focus and to sometimes it'd be reason if it's in psychosis or bipolar, those lack insight until you're treated. And so there's a lot of understanding meds. It's not like you take a Motrin and you feel better in a minute, right? Or a half hour, an hour from a headache or something else. It's really psychotropic meds, which are meds that treat mental health conditions, take a long time. Takes, you can start working, they start at a lower dose and they go higher. And then it takes, and let's say it's not working and this person is still symptomatic, which means they could be struggling with depression or delusions or whatever that is. And then so they're on it now for maybe a month, 4 weeks, and it's not really working, even though they've increased it, try to find the right dose. Understanding now that their person is still struggling with the symptoms, lowering that and trying a new one. Each medication is different. There's not one medication that will treat everybody the same, and we're all chemically different. And understanding that by families will give them a little bit more patience. It doesn't mean you're not frustrated. It doesn't mean that this is not difficult, but expectations are really important. And the more you know about things, and not through always Dr. Google or social media, right? They're not really your friends always. They give you information, but can't interpret it unless you're really in the field or you have experience. And even then. So, I mean, and so that's really my heart goes with educating people so that they can understand that by supporting is what? You want to hear some of the things I'm known as? Zip it. I was at a Northwell. It was a stroke thing, and some man was making bracelets for something else. And I said, "Oh, could you make zip it bracelets?" Because wherever I am, especially look, zip it. Unless you have something helpful or nice to say, please don't say anything. You can always say words, but you can't take them back. And, do unto others as you have others do unto you. I mean, so it is so important that we lose the criticism and judgment. The world would be a better place. And we're humans. I'm not saying we don't do it, but trying to be conscious of it and supporting someone who's struggling, even though we're frustrated. And sometimes it comes out as criticism or judgment. Because you don't understand, this is not willful, right? Someone didn't choose a mental health condition. They didn't choose cancer. They didn't choose diabetes. So therefore, understanding how to support someone, and then really my thing that will help everybody be successful, be a good listener and really see the person. Because I have families that I work with, and then I meet their person who I've heard a little bit about, and I'm thinking, they're not like what the family said. I see strength. I see more qualities that we can get them to where they need to be. But families are still in that shock phase. Oh my God, what happened? They were a decent student growing up. They were a decent athlete, whatever it was, they could maneuver through things. And then towards the late teens to 20s, when 75% of mental health conditions come out by the age of 24, they see this thing that has prevented them and got stuck in the mud. They're not lazy people, by and large. If they were one way, they suddenly didn't become something else. They became symptomatic that prevents them from moving forward. And it's very exciting because we do a lot of different things in our affiliate that actually helps people. We train people who are struggling as leaders when they're ready, and we have classes and support groups. And it really is nice to look and see that everybody has strengths. And when you really notice them, sometimes you can't change weaknesses, right? But the most important thing is utilize strengths to balance out things that you can't change, or even until they do change, notice people's strengths and right? Does anybody go towards people who are negative? No, hopefully none of your friends are always critical and negative. You pick people to be around you who are positive and right? So, and if you pick people who are critical, I want to know you. It doesn't sound like I would. So we got to straighten it out. No, but
Yeah.
but
Okay.
so people respond. You want to change a behavior. I'm giving you a secret, and I always tell people, I'm giving you a secret. If you want to
Okay.
change behavior, notice the little thing that someone is doing well, because they'll want to do more of it. Whether it be children, no matter what age, or adults, this is how you get to change behavior in a nice way. People want to do more of what you notice. And if you're not noticing anything, sometimes negative attention is better than no attention. But how you change that around is notice how hard they're working, even if you don't see it for the mental health condition. They are
Right.
working hard to figure it out.
Yeah, it's like that positive reinforcement, you know. Yeah. That's great. So now I just want to shift the conversation a little bit and get into because Voices of Hope, I call it a brave space. And this is where we share stories of resilience. Stories where you have faced a life challenge where life really punched you in the gut and you had to get back up and you overcame it. So I just want to ask you, I know you told me you have many stories like this. But if you could just pick one that you think will be helpful for our audience to hear, a story where you faced something and you didn't know how you would overcome it, but you did. And if you could tell us that challenge and how you were able to overcome it.
Hmm. There's so many. I hate to say
We
that.
just need one. We just need one.
One. I mean, I'm going to tell you, a lot of times there have been in my life physical challenges, right? And that's why I always say to people, don't look at anybody you know nothing about them, and I'm going to do two that are connected and one that was also, there were many more, but I almost died. No one ever,
Oh no.
people don't
Yeah.
know that. I went septic shock. Somehow I started gurgling. My husband went to work and I called him and I could hardly talk. And I must have crawled to the back door, opened it, and brother-in-law came, who was a doctor, and started an IV in the bed, and because my organs were shutting down, and they took me into the emergency. He literally brought me into the emergency room, and when my sister came, they said, "Oh no, that was a corpse," because I was all blue and really I was close to death. And they brought me back, and one of the things that as we go through life, relating to what happened to you helps you understand others too, right? And
Yeah.
so even though I thought, don't cut off my nightgown, I thought I was saying I was in this dark place. And, but I heard everything they were saying. To this day, I could tell you everything that people were saying when they were working on me. And then I would say about 6 months later or so, that happened again. And so, and I was just telling somebody this morning, they were sort of laughing about it, because it's a pretty stressful thing, I would say. I said, I want to lose weight and I want some rest. I'm really tired. And so when that happened and I got out of the hospital, I lost weight and had to rest. So I said, God, this is not what I meant by losing weight and resting. So I never asked for that anymore because I don't want him to misinterpret what I said. Right. And then another thing happened was I was doing a presentation, and that was, I think, before NAMI. But something that happened during NAMI was that I did a presentation. And when I left, it was in an area on the island where it wasn't too far, maybe 20 minutes, half hour from where I am. And I guess I was in the car and I called my husband. I said, I don't know where I am. I don't recognize anything. And he didn't know what was going on. And he asked me to tell him where I was. I got home, told my brother, who's a doctor, and he said, you better go right to the ER because they thought it may have been a stroke or something. It was transglobal amnesia, which happened actually to many, many people I know. It happens once, but it was really scary. And I don't remember anything. Your brain shuts down.
Hmm.
And, you know, so, I mean, we laugh about it because I came into the kitchen. I said, who made this mess? Of course, I made the mess. But he laughs. And he said, you have to go to the ER. And I'm like, go to the ER.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I went, and by the morning, it was late night. And by the morning, things started coming back. And that, I would say, was pretty traumatic too, because I was lost. Had no memory of that time, but it didn't happen again, thank God. And my brother said my mother went through it once, and my mother-in-law went through it once. So I guess it's more common than we thought. But that one was pretty,
Yes.
all disturbing. But basically, my philosophy is, I'm not going to pay attention to it, and it won't pay attention to me. So I
Hmm.
leave the past in the past if I can. I do have some anxiety, so I work really hard in NAMI, and NAMI is lucky to get me because that's
Yeah.
I deal with my anxieties, right? To work.
Yes, yes, of
And
course.
so,
Yeah, thank you for sharing those stories. Um, I know when you were going through it must have been so scary with
yeah.
everything that happened. But I have a follow-up question with these two experiences, especially the near death experience. How did those experiences change you? Like, do you
Yeah,
have
no,
a
no, no.
new take on life? Like, do you see life differently now after those experiences?
I'm going to tell you, yes, and it just accentuated what I was brought up with. My father always said, he was a physician, and he was always intense about appreciate every day because you never know the next. He says patients walk into my office and sometimes leave with a death sentence because of tests and things. So he always said, and so I always lived very intensely because that always struck me. Appreciate every day. And when things were really hard in my life and it seemed like everybody was sick and I felt very alone, one of the things I did look at what I had, maybe a childhood that I appreciated or parents, right? But it was hard because you feel very alone. So never look at anybody. And even though I come off positive and, happy and whatever it is, right? Because that's who I am by and large, but you don't know what's inside, the struggle or the aloneness or what stress or whatever that is. It's just who we are sometimes on the surface. It doesn't mean I'm always like, struggling or unhappy,
Hmm.
but how that left me then, it just reminded me to appreciate every day because we
Right,
never know what's the next day going to be. And when I talk to families and people, let's close the door to the past, learn from it, but we can't change it. And let's
right,
open the door to the present. And that's with anybody struggling or anything else. So you give a chance to change, to be better, to do better. And
right.
right? And not stop worrying about the future because you never know what's going to happen with that one too.
Right. So like, especially having, going through something like that and feeling that anxiety, after stuff like that, and having anxiety in general, how do you do that? How do you close the door on that chapter and then move forward with your life? How were you able to do that?
I just think being busy. I think being busy for me helps me focus on what's happening now.
Hmm.
And
So
so
staying in the present,
that's
that,
what I'm saying in the present.
yeah.
You can ask everybody. I'm a little too busy, so I'd like to be a little less busy. But in general, being busy helps me focus on what I need to do because there are so many things. Like we said earlier, you can't change things. You can say some things, but there's some things you can't change. So I don't want to say waste my energies, sort of is like that, to sit and struggle. It doesn't mean I don't have feelings. It doesn't mean I don't know I have feelings, but it means that I just need to move through. And one of the things is sometimes we have terrible days, something that we did or said, or something was really hurtful, or we lost somebody, whatever it may be, and the pain is excruciating. Don't it is. And so how I get through that is I always say to myself, I just got to get through today. Tomorrow will be maybe a little bit less pain, and every day thereafter maybe a little bit less pain. It's the only way I can get through some of these really tough days,
Right.
And I think everybody needs to figure out for themselves what that is. For me, it's really just motivating myself to get through the day, and sometimes being a little mindful or doing something that I like. I mean, everybody knows I like Walker, Texas Ranger, which most people don't even hear about. But me, when I watch that, I completely enjoy it. And I feel like refreshed afterwards. It's like yoga. It's like yoga
Mhm.
and meditation. For me, that's really changes my body to relax.
Yeah.
And I get very tired. So that really does help.
Okay, good, good. Those are great, great things. Yeah, and about being busy, doing things. I know someone had once told me, how does it go? Idle mind is the devil's playground, and I really saw that, especially like in moments where I was in depression and I wasn't doing much. Um, like I tell a lot of you know my peers in inpatient settings, like when I'm depressed and I'm just laying in bed, and that's when the thoughts and the negative thoughts come in and they're really like attacking you, and I found that when I get up, out of bed and starts to do things, it kind of subsides a little bit. So I can see where you're saying where you're keeping busy and that keeps your mind occupied. So yeah, thank you for sharing. I think that's going to be very helpful for our listeners today. I know you were saying that there were other challenges that you had in your life that we're not going to get into. But I do want to ask you, looking back on your life, what would you say to your younger self while you were going through those things? What would you say?
Good question. What would I say to my younger self? Keep putting one foot in front of the other, and life can change, and it does, and keep on. And then basically my philosophy was always volunteering and giving of myself, and that really helped me. And some of the things were tough. In hindsight, I probably learned a lot, even though during the time it was really hard. And I have to tell you, I mean, it's funny because in NAMI, I think most people can, if they're aware, can be in so many of the different, identify with so many of the different challenges. And something which I will share, which I don't usually, when I was young and something happened, and usually trauma or something will bring you into, a stressor, into a place that's difficult. And I was sitting on my back porch. I was in my young 20s somewhere. And I was crying. And my father came back out and said, what's going on? And I said, and this was really on the precipice or in depression, and I didn't realize this, but I said, so what's the point of life? You eat, you get hungry. You sleep, you get tired, and it all ends up in nothing. So what's the point? And he recognized that was really a depression. And he gave me medication and I wouldn't say got over it, but I got treated, and it was dealing with a tremendous stressor, a loss.
Mhm.
And that's really what happened. But I always say, that all of these things that happen to me help me understand someone else. I don't use it to say poor me. I say it, okay, this is how I can understand when you feel that nothingness, you feel that suicide, like, what's the point? There's nothing beyond this, being in that dark hole. And it helps, and I really hope that people would utilize some of their own feelings to create empathy and understanding. And that's what I do in my life. The same thing as if you're really sick in bed. I'm sure everybody's had terrible flu or just been feeling really miserable. And I say, what if I could never get out of this? What if I had to feel this sick every day, like cancer or something? Would I want to live? Because, there's a lot of talk about euthanasia and all that stuff. And I think, maybe I wouldn't, because when you're young and you have energy, you can never relate to that. Why would I want to end my life? But when you go through things, it really helps, understanding what other people may feel or are going through. And I mean that. And so many things happen. I mean, it's funny. And you look at everybody and think, if they have no one has a perfect life. No one has a good time every day, right? And
Exactly.
so understanding what you present and how you present yourself. Thank God, humor has been a really important part of my life. My husband's really funny, and we laugh. And my dog, of course, she's my friend, and and I always grew up with dogs. And when I was really upset, I'd sit on the front steps and talk to the dog.
Yeah.
It'd be about my parents or about something, who knows what. But utilizing things and having that ability to sometimes see humor, as long as it's not deprecating, but seeing humor in some of the things really helps me get through,
Yes. Yeah.
things, and including, with family members who have struggled, you know, after walking on the eggshells, right? Learning how to be able to be a little bit more comfortable and use a little bit of humor to get our points across.
Yes, yes. I just want to thank you so much for sharing something so deeply personal like that. I wasn't expecting something like that, but thank you for being vulnerable. And because this is what it's about, you're being brave. We're in the brave space right now. You're being brave and courageous to be able to share something like that. Um, but I like what you said, how it kind of like changes your perspective when you go through something like that, to give you that empathy and to use that not as something that keeps you down, but something that lifts you up and lifts others up. And that's something that I do, in my day job, is to use my personal experience and to help, uplift other people, spread hope in any way that I can. And I think that's a lot of the reason why we've connected in the way that we have, because I think we do have similar inclinations and values. So thank you for that. And another thing I want to say that you brought up is a key word. I'm just going to highlight it. Is that life can change. That's the key word. Life can change. Even though you may have had that depression, y- it's not it's not something that stayed the whole time. Like you had your medication, you had whatever you went through, and life changed. Things got better. Things can get better. Um, so I just wanted to highlight that. So thank you for sharing that.
Omar, I was lucky to have an in-house doctor who treated me, but in
Right.
general, that could be one of the challenges, is to find the support and the treatment, right, when you need it.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, I'm not going to say that that is easy to find, but be persistent is really,
Persistent.
yeah. My three P's: persistence is one, perseverance, that's the first one, patience, which most people don't have and need to develop, because when, especially you are, or the family is, people learn by experience and not by always overprotecting, but letting someone learn by, as long as it's not a safety issue, learning by experience, because human beings say, oh, that didn't work. I don't want to do that again, right? So
Hmm.
experience is really a good teacher. And the
It
last
is.
is the one that I spoke about before, is positivity, finding the strengths in someone, and they will go towards that.
Yes, looking at the strength. Yeah, I
Mm.
always take that strength-based approach because so many times, especially when you're hospitalized or an inpatient, you don't think you could do anything. You don't think you have any. You're just weak. You don't have any strengths. But I try to help people see the strength in themselves and use those strengths to build upon things. So it's good that you bring that up because we all have strength, even if maybe we don't see them. And sometimes it's hard for us to see them ourselves. But if you other people, maybe you'll to see them more than you see them. So it's always good, to encourage one another in that way. So I'm coming down to the last couple of questions. I want to give you time to answer these questions. So these are two big ones. All right. The first one is, what gives you hope?
Connection, family, um, having experiences that seem like they were hopeless and getting through them and seeing that there's another side that you eventually can get to. I would say resilience, knowing that, even though things can feel like they keep you down for a while, understanding that, feeling it, not saying you can't feel it, being good to yourself and taking a time off until you now have ready to come back. As long as it's not too long, it's not weeks, stuff like that. But really recognizing your feelings, um, getting through them, or not even getting through them, feeling them, and then saying, okay, let me see what I can do now. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's really, and that gives hope that, things are not always easy. They're not always positive. Life can be really hard for you or people you love. And knowing that, uh, being persistent and support and connection and the power, whether it be myself or to touch somebody else's lives, especially my family, to give support to people who need it, and probably to be a good listener. It's probably
Yeah.
the most.
Yes. 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 Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm going to go down to my final question for you today is, what would you like to say to someone who may be struggling right now? Maybe they're having a mental health condition. Maybe they just got diagnosed and they don't know what this good doing. Maybe they almost died. Maybe they had a similar situation with you, like you have had in your life or experiences that you've had, and they're looking for hope. They're looking for it. But what would you say to them?
I would say probably to recognize your feelings first, right? Because if you push them down and you don't feel them, it's not going to be helpful. But the second thing is actually find connection. Sometimes I would say find education, but a lot of times people look for it in Google and they can't interpret. And they think, oh my God, look at this. I don't want that side effect or something. And it's very small. Most people don't have it. So really find connection. Find us, NAMI. I'm going to tell you, we have so many things going. And if volunteering for us or doing something for us will help you keep your brain a little bit going outside of yourself, and then it heals slowly. It doesn't mean that it's the whole job, but it is a good factor, And so I would say, please come and we will help, support, strengthen, and also teach you or your family. We'll straighten your family out. No.
So how can we get involved? How can we get involved with NAMI? Where can we get connected?
Well, certainly our website would be the first place, and we have an information thing that comes to me, but it's NAMI CSLI, Central Suffolk, Long Island, New York, CSLINY.org. And, and my information may be on it, or contact me, I guess you can do. But you'll see my name, you'll see information, send out the information sheet, and I do call you back and get in touch, because we do want to be able to help people touch lives and make a difference, because there can be. And we like to train people who are ready to be trained to touch other lives and do good things. So,
Yes.
and we have a lot of activities. We have a Faith Net coming up, which is a social media and the brain, and it's going to be May 7th. We have so many things going on. We have a book talk with somebody's in Huntington, about somebody who wrote a book about her father who was schizophrenia. So we have so many things, and there's so many different things that you can relate to. We have fun things like sip and paint, paint and sip. The comedy club, that's March 26th. The paint and sip. March 24th is the library. just go to our website. We have a lot of that stuff up. We have a walk. Please, I would love you to
Yeah.
come to our walk October 4th at Sunken Meadow Park. It is really exciting. We have a lot of organizations and hospitals also participate. It's a good resource place, but it's a good connection that you don't feel alone. And I think the beginning step is when you come to like our peer support group, that we talk a topic like what is happiness, social anxiety, when you make mistakes. We talk a lot about real life, and we take a topic each week. But more importantly, or as importantly, is that I hate to say normalizes mental health conditions, but it shows you that it is a illness. It is a biological that can be treated, and maybe it's the first step that you've done towards anything to really connection. Because a lot of people, unfortunately, don't understand and may say things. Please don't let that stop you. Please don't let anybody with the judgment, criticism, or news stuff, don't let the negativity stop you. It's, have the strength that, come to us. We'll help.
Yes, yes. Thank you. There you have it. NAMI, they have so many great services. I've been getting involved myself, and it really is a great organization. And if you can get involved, I very much would encourage that. Um, and lastly, Ellen, you are a voice of hope.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My pleasure, and it's a pleasure knowing you and your positivity and strength. So thank you, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining the show. It was great to have you. And until next time, this has been another episode of Voices of Hope. I'm your host, Omar Kenyatta Clark. And until next time, let's rise. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Voices of Hope. Your time and attention mean the world, and we hope today's conversation has inspired and encouraged you. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe so you never miss a moment of hope. We're all part of this community, and your voice matters. If you're ready to share your own story of resilience and become a voice of hope, reach out to me directly at omarkenyattaclark@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, stay tuned for our next episode. We've got more powerful stories and inspiring voices coming your way, and I can't wait for you to be a part of it.